If she doesn't win Best Actress, I might riot. I might riot. Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a bit of a different concept for a video. With the Oscars coming up, I wanted to, for the very first time in my life, actually watch all of the Best Picture nominees. It's a hard feat because it's a huge category. There are about 10 films nominated, and they're all on different platforms, some of them on no platform for less than $20, so believe it or not, this was kind of ambitious for me. So I've watched all the Best Picture nominees, and if you follow me on Letterboxd, then you might have already seen some of my reviews on these movies. But today I'm going to go more in depth into what I think about all of these movies and go into who I think will win or should win in a substantial amount of these categories. At the end, I'll share what I think will win Best Picture and what I personally would choose for Best Picture. Probably spoilers ahead. I will put timestamps in the description so that you can skip ahead to the movies that you've already seen. And just remember that we all come from different places and different backgrounds and have very different life experiences, and those life experiences largely inform how we see art and how we connect with art. I implore you to remember that before you engage with conversations online about these films, because some people can get hostile and I don't invite any of that to my channel. Starting with American Fiction, this was both written and directed by Cord Jefferson. You may recognize him because he worked on Succession and The Good Place. American Fiction stars Jeffrey Wright and he plays Monk Ellison, a professor and writer struggling in the literary world. Frustrated by the success of stereotypical Black narratives, he decides to write a satirical novel under a pseudonym, and then that unexpectedly becomes a bestseller. He juggles family issues, including ailing his mother, who is sick, and also reconnecting with his estranged brother, Cliff. As his alter ego gains some notoriety, he finds himself entangled in unexpected situations, including a movie deal and a literary award. So the film explores authenticity, racial stereotypes, and also the sacrifices that artists have to make for success. First of all you people on Letterboxd had me thinking that this movie wouldn't be funny, but it is. It is a sharp and direct satire that conveys its message by poking fun at stigmas and racism, but it's not preachy at all. The initial half focuses more on the drama, setting the stage for Monk's surrealist second half where we go into like a truly meta experience. I like the writing of this film, but I also feel like the performances by Jeffrey Wright and Sterling K. Brown definitely elevated this movie. Sterling K. Brown's side role also leaves a lasting impact. Like, you know, when the tears start running on this man and he starts monologuing, it is over. I don't think this movie was one of the best films in the Best Picture lineup, but I did really enjoy it. The next Best Picture nominee is Anatomy of a Fall, and this is a French legal crime drama directed by Justin Triet. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm so sorry if it's not. Basically, in an isolated mountain chalet in Grenoble, France, the death of Samuel leads to a complex legal battle. His wife, Sandra, faces accusations that she pushed him off of their balcony, leading to his fall and his death. Their son, Daniel, becomes a huge part of this trial, and he feels conflicted over his parents' relationship as he learns more about it and also recounts what he's witnessed. As the trial unfolds, revelations about Samuel's death, Sandra's affair, and a recorded fight adds layers to the case, and Daniel's testimony, influenced by his own struggles and observations, becomes a turning point, ultimately leading to whether or not they decide that Sandra should be acquitted. First of all, we're gonna need to start handing awards to animals because the dog in this movie was so good. The movie really takes its time to delve into the nitty-gritty of this relationship, showing that scrutinizing every single argument and doubting people's intentions can be even messier than living through it. The actress for the mom, Sandra, really nails her role, but I want to talk about the son, Milo, because he did such a good job. This kid's journey through figuring out whether his mom's a murderer or if his dad had taken his own life is truly impressive. So the movie, despite having a whodunit element, is more about how people change. It's about how people can grow to resent each other, and the parents who grow to resent each other also hide a lot of their pain from their child. I do really like the choices that the director made, like going back in time in flashbacks, but also using audio recordings so that we are listening and not just like being shown something or told something. I thought it was really well done. I'm not too sure what awards it could win, but I do think that all the categories it was nominated for was well deserved. Now let's talk about Barbie. Barbie was of course one half of the Barbenheimer cultural phenomenon of 2023. The movie was co-written by Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach, and it was directed by Greta Gerwig and co-produced by Margot Robbie. It starts out in Barbie Land, a society that's run by Barbies and Kens, but it has a matriarchal structure. together. While the Kens spend their time at the beach and all they do is beach, all the Barbies hold esteemed positions of power. Ryan Gosling's Ken, yearning for a closer relationship with Margot Robbie's Barbie, gets rejected because her Barbie just wants to prioritize other activities and also her female friendships. Then Barbie starts to confront existential fears like death, and then she experiences some bizarre circumstances like having flat feet and like physical imperfections overnight. Barbie learns that she must go to the real world and find the girl that's playing with her so that she can remedy these afflictions, so then she goes into the real world for the first time. She locates the owner Sasha, who tells her that she promotes unrealistic body standards, but then she finds out that her mother Gloria is the person who triggered the crisis. So while this is all happening and Barbie is about to take Gloria and Sasha back to Barbie Land, Ken is also in the real world and he discovers the patriarchy for the first time. He then goes back to Barbie Land where he spreads this ideology to all the other Kens, and then they overtake Barbie Land and put all the Barbies in submissive positions. When Barbie goes further into her existential crisis and becomes despondent, it's up to Gloria and Sasha to help all the Barbies deprogram themselves. There were such staggering reactions to this movie. I personally had a lot of fun, from Ryan Gosling's himboism to the physical comedy to all the pop culture references. I like the humor. I also like that there were some serious elements that mirrored real life, like how the patriarchy harms both men and women and preys on the insecurities of men, just like how it did so with Ken, so he fell down the rabbit hole of patriarchal douchebaggery and toxic masculinity because he was in a place of vulnerability. I also like the acknowledgement that it's the patriarchy that did turn the Barbie dolls into something ugly, because it was supposed to originally be something empowering for girls. And I also enjoy the performances throughout the movie, like Margot Robbie, Ariana Greenblatt, and America Ferrera, but also like I think this ensemble really worked well together. I think it's just a fun film overall, and when I was riding the high of having watched this film when I came out of the theater, I rated it like a 5 out of 5, but honestly, now, upon thinking about it and upon reflection, I would probably knock it down a point to 4 out of 5. Just because as I was really thinking about this in hindsight, it didn't say a lot about feminism. Like, it's sort of feminism 101, which should make it all the more ridiculous that so many men had a problem with this movie. It's not the feminist masterpiece that a lot of people tried to convince me that it was. However, I do still think it's a fun movie, and it's an interesting and creative exploration of what it means to be a woman in society. I appreciate it a lot for that, and I understand that it was a very ambitious movie for Greta Gerwig to make. So while I don't think it's going to sweep at the Oscars, I do think it has a good chance in the costumes and production design categories. I love that they use practical sets, and I really wish more filmmakers did that. The next Best Picture nominee is The Holdovers, and this movie was directed by Alexander Payne, and it takes place in the 70s, and it's about this strict classics professor at Barton Academy named Paul, who fails the son of a senator, I think. So this cost the Academy some money. So because that happened, they make Paul stay back during the holidays and supervise students who have nowhere to go. This is where he meets a student named Angus Tully, and tensions rise between the both of them when the holidays start, because Angus Tully kind of is a bit of a menace at first. Paul starts to connect with Angus and then decides to fulfill his wish of taking him on a Boston field trip where they connect more about their upbringing, their experiences, their families, etc. And then this prompts reflections on their future, and they decide to spend New Year's together. I kind of don't want to explain how it ends because I highly recommend that you watch this movie. I think it's a new holiday comfort classic. It just makes you feel less lonely. You know those kinds of films where like your viewing experience is largely informed by the kind of day you're having, by the mood you're in, by the era in your life you're in even. This is kind of one of those movies. It's a good blend of heartbreak and coming of age, but with some Christmas charm. What I really like about this movie though is the evolving friendship and character work throughout the movie. But the movie doesn't do anything groundbreaking or impressive. It's just like a sort of movie that you just really connect with and can make you feel really comforted. Also, Paul Giamatti's performance. Like, if Paul Giamatti is gonna throw a Christmas party, I am watching that. Paul Giamatti was so good. He played kind of like a Scrooge-like character. He had some incredible pieces of dialogue as well, like, "Listen, you hormonal vulgarian." And then there's also the actor for Angus. I think his name is Dominic. I would have honestly loved to see him nominated for something, but I digress. I'm just truly happy that I got to see Divine Joy Randolph nominated because she did so well. She plays Mary, the cafeteria manager whose son was killed in the Vietnam War, and she's friends with Paul Giamatti's character. She honestly just gives a Midas touch to any scene that she's in, so I really hope and I think she's going to win Best Supporting Actress. Now we have Killers of the Flower Moon. This was directed by Martin Scorsese and it stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, and Lily Gladstone. I cannot stress enough how good this film is. Like, I am still left speechless. This movie is based on a nonfiction book by David Grann that investigates the murders of the Osage people in Oklahoma in the 1920s. It not only explores the murders of the Osage people, but it also explores greed and wealth and conspiracy and racism and the early days of the FBI. It first revolves around the Osage Nation's prosperity due to oil discoveries on the reservation in the early 20th century. However, this newfound wealth of course attracts the greed and corruption of white people, leading to a mysterious amount of killings of Osage people. Ernest Buckhart, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, marries Molly Kyle, who is played by Lily Gladstone, and therefore he marries into this wealth and becomes entangled in a web of deceit orchestrated by his uncle, William King Hale. As the murders escalate, concerns about racial violence and injustice rises within the Osage community, and the film explores the impact of these murders on Molly and also her family, and Molly becomes the key figure in seeking justice for her family. The movie unfolds against the backdrop of historical events such as the Tulsa Race Massacre, and also explores how difficult it is to get accountability and restitution. In the end, the film delves into the aftermath of these investigations and also the legal proceedings, and really highlights how this has impacted the Osage community. Sometimes I find myself not getting mildly annoyed, but feeling a bit tired of stories about US history that only have to do with world wars. Not because I don't think those stories are important, but because I think there are just so many pockets of US history that don't get taught in schools, that people don't know about, and that people should know about. And this is exactly what I mean by a story in US history that needs to be told because so many people don't know about it. And the way that the story was told was so phenomenal. Like, it is 3.5 hours, which I know is so long. When I first saw that, I was like, oh my god, I'm not going to be able to sit through this movie. I'm such an iPad kid. I get so distracted. But I was sat. There is not a single minute of this movie that is wasted, and it is portrayed with such respect to the Osage people. They were a huge part of the making of this film. It's just so heartbreaking and poignant. The most heartbreaking thing is watching how the murders and genocide of these people were built off of an illusion of kindness. They were taken advantage of and murdered by people who claim to be their friends and family, and it is just so, it makes you so angry watching that for them and also at the justice system. To conclude my thoughts on this movie, Lily Gladstone manages to do so much with so little. If she doesn't win Best Actress, I might riot. I would actually be bothered. Now let's talk about Maestro. Apparently Hollywood is so knees deep into the era of remakes and reboots and sequels that it managed to make a prequel to an Oscar-nominated film from last year. In all seriousness, Maestro is directed by Bradley Cooper and he stars in it as well. And it's about the late conductor and musician Leonard Bernstein. Pretty much at the beginning, it's 1987. He's 70 years old and he's playing a piece from his opera and reflects on the profound impact of his late wife, Felicia. Then it shifts to the 40s where he's a rising conductor and then he's catapulted into fame. He meets Felicia, he ends his relationship with David. Their marriage is shown to flourish because they have mutual support of each other. Despite his success in the 50s, his infidelities and his struggles with substance abuse strained their relationship, but they endure through this until Felicia's death. Then we go back to the 80s where Leonard reminisces their youth and also reflects on missing Felicia. I mean no disrespect when I say that I am so fatigued by biopics about musicians and actors and such in Hollywood. I actually legitimately don't think we have had 1 year where there hasn't been at least one biopic nominated in the Best Picture category. Like last year was Tar and Elvis, and then King Richard the year before, The Trial of the Chicago 7 the year before that. I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood the year before that one. Putting my sentiments aside though, I didn't like Maestro. The heart and soul of this movie is supposed to be this relationship between Leonard and Felicia, and yet I don't feel like I really knew anything about their relationship. I never really understood their relationship, and there was a part of this movie where they first meet and then they're connecting over their work. And then there's this whole sequence where they flirt and they woo each other, for lack of a better term, with lines read from a play together on stage. And then it's supposed to transition into Felicia becoming more and more integrated into Leonard's life. Like he runs off the stage to greet her and hug her, but then it doesn't actually tell me anything about their relationship. I also think that as far as the story goes in terms of Leonard being a conductor and being catapulted into fame and success, I don't really know much about his work. I don't know what makes him a good conductor. Also, apparently people in the classic musical world say that Bradley Cooper did a terrible job as a conductor. I don't know. I was only a violinist, so I have no idea about conducting, but apparently it was bad. Anyway, the movie doesn't have anything to say about music or relationships or fidelity or marriage. It has nothing to say about sexuality either. Upon finishing this movie, I was left a bit hollow. And don't get me wrong, I like the cinematography, I like the editing, Carey Mulligan was wonderful, I just don't think it's gonna win many awards, if any. So next is Oppenheimer. I finally watched Oppenheimer, and I know that's going to piss people off, but it is what it is. So as a lot of people know, this movie was directed by Christopher Nolan, and it's sort of like a jigsaw puzzle because there are two different timelines kind of tangled up. One timeline has Robert Oppenheimer, the physicist, sharing his life story at a security hearing in 1954, and the other timeline is Louis Strauss's perspective during a 1959 Senate confirmation hearing. So the movie delves into Oppenheimer's complex life, his role in creating the atomic bomb, the moral dilemmas he faced, and all against the backdrop of war politics and personal vendettas. I am 1000% willing to admit that this was not a story that I was ever going to be that interested in watching on the screen. I know about the Manhattan Project, I know about Oppenheimer, I learned about it in school, but I had no interest in watching a movie about it. But that being said, I know that it is a very well-made film, so I rated it highly anyway. I mean, Christopher Nolan is Christopher Nolan. It goes without saying that he knows how to make a good movie. I like that Nolan didn't necessarily portray Oppenheimer as a good person. He more so just explores his internal crisis as he's creating this atomic bomb. The performances in this movie were arguably career best level. I think Robert Downey Jr. is definitely gonna win Best Supporting Actor for this role. Cillian Murphy is also probably going to win Best Actor. I think he did a really good job making the audience wonder if Oppenheimer experienced a genuine moral crisis or if he was using the trial to sort of reshape his image and legacy. I think the movie did a good job showing that Oppenheimer consistently made the wrong choices, and by the end of the movie, he's just like a hollow shell. So yeah, well-constructed film. Story not for me, but still a good film, so that's why I rated it a 4 out of 5. Now we've got Past Lives. Believe it or not, this was Celine Song's directorial debut. Among the Oscar nominees, this film is definitely more slow and pulled back and more character focused. The movie follows the intertwined lives of Na-young and Hae-sung, who, after developing feelings for each other when they're 12 years old in Seoul, Korea, lose contact when Na-young's family moves to Toronto. As their lives unfold in different cities, with Nora, formerly Na-young, in New York and Hae-sung in China, they navigate the complexities of love and distance. The story then spans over another 12 years, revealing the evolution of their relationships, including Nora's marriage to Arthur, and the characters reflect and contemplate on the possibility of alternate timelines, on the future, and on their past lives. It's a big game of what if, which is super fun. Psychological torture, but fun. I don't have a lot to say about this movie besides that it really hits you with a mix of deep sadness, but also a comforting sense of resolution. It's about dealing with what is, what was, and what if. And it really is, about those moments where you think about what your life could have been if you just made a different decision, if you had said something else, if you had not said something. And it's about making peace with the idea that change doesn't erase the value of the past and you can mourn it. The movie did a good job of exploring that unique process of moving on when a chapter ends or you're healing from something. And even making you question if you really own that part of your life anymore and if people are ever going to truly understand what that part of your life meant to you. it really made me pause and think about all the decisions that I've made in my life and where I could be. It made me think so much that my head hurt. A high mark of a great film. I don't know if Past Lives will win any awards, but I think its nominations are very well deserved. The second to last Best Picture nominee is Poor Things. This is where I feel like you all are gonna hate me because I have some controversial opinions. There are things that I liked about this movie, but the story is not one of them. This movie starts with a dark and twisted experiment by the scientist Godwin Baxter in Victorian London. Godwin Baxter creates Bella Baxter, a woman with an infant brain in her body. This woman, played by Emma Stone, was a character named Victoria, but then she jumped off a bridge and she died, and she was fully pregnant at the time. So Godwin recovered her body and took the brain of the fetus in her belly and replaced it in her brain. So at the beginning of the movie, Bella essentially has the mind of an infant baby. As Bella's brain develops, and it develops fast, she becomes more curious about the world and about her own desires, specifically her sexual desires and her desire to see the world, so she runs off with a debauched lawyer named Duncan. Their journey takes them across Europe, where Bella discovers more about sex and a bit more about philosophy and socialism. Meanwhile, Godwin's health deteriorates, so Bella eventually comes back home. The film aims to explore feminism through liberation, identity, and autonomy. So to get this out of the way, I don't hate this film. There are just some things that were really concerning to me. No, I am not one of those people that dislikes the movie because there's sex in it. I actually wasn't fazed by that itself. But that being said, when Emma Stone's character Bella starts exploring that, it's not quite clear what her mental age is. She still acts like a kid. She doesn't seem to fully understand what she's doing because she calls it furious jumping. And later in the movie, it's quite clear that her brain has developed into adulthood and that she is an adult. But when she starts doing that, it really is not clear. Like when that starts, me and the two other women sitting next to me that were complete strangers to me, all three of us were like, huh? Now I see why people would argue that is the point. This film is about grooming. But eventually Bella does find out that she's an experiment and that she had a whole life prior to being Bella. This was a secret that was kept from her, and she doesn't find out about it until the third act of the film. And when she does find out about it, she doesn't seem to be all that outraged. Like, she's not happy about it, but she forgives them so easily. And I would have been more fine with this aspect of the film if she had been more outraged about being taken advantage of. If her arc throughout the movie would have been discovering the world, discovering her sexuality, learning about feminist theory, and then being able to call out the fact that the men in this film really took advantage of her emotionally and sexually, I would have been more okay with that. But that didn't happen, and I feel like a lot of the hate for this movie comes from the fact that if they were going to do that, they should have wrapped that up in a much better way. The other thing is that in the second act of the film, Bella goes into sex work, and then there's a sex scene where she and someone else are having sex in front of two children. And that was not needed. You will have a difficult time convincing me that that added something additional to the story that hadn't already been said. But if we disregard those, we assume that those aren't issues. I kept hearing about this movie in reviews and from other people before I watched it that it's like a more mature, twisted Barbie, that it did Barbie better than Barbie, and it was more feminist and it was more like edgy and it was like a female feminist Frankenstein movie. And I get all the comparisons to Barbie. Both movies are essentially about a naive woman going and exploring the real world for the first time and discovering what it means to be a woman in society for the very first time. But I don't think Poor Things said much about feminism. I think it only really advocates for women to be able to do anything they want with their bodies when it comes to sex, but sex is only one facet of how the patriarchy tells women what to do and what not to do with their bodies. And also, our bodies is only one facet of feminism. There are a couple scenes that allude to Bella's desire to explore socialism and philosophy and feminist theory, but that's never truly explored in the movie. So my expectations were set really, really high, and I ultimately felt extremely underwhelmed. The way that people kept calling this a female feminist Frankenstein movie when Frankenstein was written by Mary Shelley, a woman, and this movie was written by quite obviously a man. Anyway, this is not to say that there isn't anything good about this movie. The set and production design and cinematography is just otherworldly. Every shot of this movie could be a painting, just a work of art. I also feel like it has some career best acting. Emma Stone did an amazing job. Mark Ruffalo plays this pathetic buffoon, and it's just so fun to watch him do that. But this movie is not for me, and that's okay. Lastly is The Zone of Interest, and this was both written and directed by Jonathan Glazer, and it is a co-produced film between the UK and Poland. It is about Rudolf Huss, an Auschwitz commandant who lives near the camp with his family. Amid family activities, the sounds of camp horrors linger. We're shown the horrors of this camp not through the imagery or direct perspective of what's going on at the camp, but by the juxtaposition of what's going on in Rudolph's home nearby. Rudolph is absolutely despicable, and it is a really tough watch to watch him and his family and friends just laugh in their kitchen while they're truly unspeakable horrors going on next door. The movie ends in the present day with janitors cleaning the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum, once again juxtaposing the horrors that happened years ago prior. This is one of those movies where if you watch it, you are never going to watch again. It is so difficult to get through for emotional reasons, obviously, and I think if there is one thing I feel really confident that this film is going to win, it's going to be sound design. Every single choice made in that regard is so purposeful, and it sent chills down my spine. As far as screenplays go, I don't think I love the screenplay just because I feel like I got the idea and the purpose and the message when I was 45 minutes through, and then it ended up being another hour. That being said, it's really hard to describe how I feel about a movie like this, and one thing is for sure is that it left an impact on me, undoubtedly. I thought about it for hours, and I don't think I could stomach it again, but you know, again, well done with the sound design. It was so effective. And that concludes all my thoughts for the Oscar Best Picture nominees for 2024. I feel like the Academy is going to either pick Oppenheimer or Poor Things for Best Picture, but I do think it's going to be Oppenheimer just because it's been sweeping at awards season so far, and the Academy loves Christopher Nolan and his works. But also, it seems like there is an overall positive critical reception of Poor Things, and Emma Stone has been getting awards, and the movie got a Golden Globe, so it could be that too. My pick, however, is Killers of the Flower Moon. I don't think it is impossible. I think if it's not going to be Oppenheimer or Poor Things, it would be Killers of the Flower Moon. Sometimes, not a lot, but sometimes the Academy picks a movie that no one really anticipated would win. So I feel like it's going to be Oppenheimer. I feel like everyone's anticipating that's going to be Oppenheimer, but if the Academy were to be like, actually, I would love for it to be Killers of the Flower Moon. I also wouldn't be mad if the Holdovers won. It's not going to win. Maybe for original screenplay, although for original screenplay, I feel like it's going to go to Anatomy of the Fall, possibly. For adapted screenplay, that is much tougher. Like, I genuinely do not know which one is gonna win. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments, what you thought of these movies, who you think would win for what category. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel, and thank you so much for watching.